Hey, welcome everybody back into the Wells Tech Garage for part 3 of our Honda Odyssey video series here, where we were covering the repair of a multiple cylinder misfire, check engine light, and rough idle happening on this 2006 Odyssey 3.5 liter sitting behind me here. In video number 1, if you missed it, we diagnosed the problem. We found a way to prove out that this thing needed its valves adjusted. Again, 210,000 miles. We kind of assumed that was the case, but we wanted a way to prove it out. We looked at the pressures inside of the cylinder and where the exhaust valve was opening and closing. In video number 2, we went out and actually performed the repair. We adjusted the valves. We found that every single exhaust valve on this engine was tight. Now, I didn't measure every single one. I measured the first one. It was about 5 to 7,000, something like that. It was. And we adjusted them all to the proper spec of 11 to 13 thousandths of an inch. I adjusted them all to the 13,000 mark because these valves like to tighten up over time as they impact the seats into the head. Okay? Every valve on this engine has been adjusted. The engine was sealed back up. I finished up the timing belt and water pump and set this thing down the road. Now it's almost 2 weeks later, 500 plus miles later, not a single check engine light on, no complaints of rough idle, no complaints of misfires anymore. This customer's happy. Let's take a look at the codes here. You guys can see no codes stored in the system. We have no DTCs at all. Looks like a confirmed repair, but I'm not going to just trust the misfire counter on here. We're going to look at it with the scope. I have everything hooked up already for that, but real quick, this launch tool, this is their new torque scan tool. We sent back the pad too, and we got the torque. This thing is awesome, guys. If you're looking for a scan tool, check out the launch torque. They were nice enough to send this out to us. Thing seems lightning fast. I haven't had a ton of time to play with it yet. The only downside I found so far is that it does not have an HDMI out, so I can't hook it directly up to the laptop or to our cameras or anything like that yet. I'll find a way to figure something out, but until then, I'm going to keep playing with it, and I'll let you guys know what I think of it. Seems like a great tool so far, though. All right, so pressure transducer is already sitting in cylinder 4. The vehicle is all prepped and ready to go. The scope is all set up because I didn't see any reason to have to do it again. Let's just quickly review what that old pattern looked like. This was the before. This was taken before the valve adjustment. Remember, we were looking at our pressure coming down inside of the cylinder, dropping into vacuum, and then returning back to equalization, returning back to atmospheric pressure. And we said that if this return back to atmospheric pressure, this return back to zero happens before we hit bottom dead center or 180 degrees off of top dead center, which would be bottom dead center, if that happens before, this would mean that our timing was advanced. Our timing on here on the exhaust valves was advanced. And that made total sense because our exhaust valves were tight, they took up that air gap, and the timing looked like it was advanced. That was a cut and dry, made sense, proved out that this thing at 210,000 miles definitely needed a valve adjustment. Now, we've adjusted the valves. They're sitting at 13,000. Let's take a look and see what we've got here. Let the idle stabilize. There's our misfire happening on cylinder 4. That should be good. Let's take a look at what we've got. All right, we'll grab right about here. That looks pretty good. And let's drag our cursors in and see where we're at. Try and get this perfect here, right about there. Dragging our 720 degree mark right about there. And already I can see a notable difference. Let's go ahead and let's zoom in. Look at that. Now our return back to equalization, our rise up here, we're dropping, our piston's coming down, and it's not even at bottom dead center. It's now at bottom dead center, and it's working its way back up, and we hit equalization of pressure in the exhaust. Okay? This is where we want to see our bottom dead center crossing on this 3.5 liter Honda engine. We want to see bottom dead center crossing on this upward swing. We don't want it to be way over here. We're not looking for retarded exhaust timing, and we don't want it to be here like it was on our before. Again, this is our before, our 180 mark. Our piston was at bottom dead center right here, and here's our after. That is a confirmed change. We fixed something, we changed something. We physically adjusted our valves and we changed the way this engine breathes. Now, I took this thing out afterwards, after it was done being repaired, and I drove it. I drove it before, I drove it after. Noticeable difference in the responsiveness of the engine. It seemed like it breathed better. It actually sounds like it starts up better. This thing's running like almost new again. The customer's very happy with it. They're not getting that check engine light on anymore. And they said their fuel economy is also slightly improved. Now there is one more thing here that I wanted to look at, and that was the duration of our valve, because we thought, and I posed the question, would our duration change with our valve being tighter? Because as that rocker arm comes down, there's no air gap to make up now. Does our duration change? So again, I believe I said our duration on our other one was about 269 degrees. Let's just try and measure it out real quick as a rough duration. Yeah, that looks about, 269 degrees from our valve opening and our valve closing. And let's compare that to this one. Find the spot that it stops pulling vacuum, right? Probably about there. And probably right about, we'll just call it rough right about there. And again, these could go a couple degrees either way, but 246 degrees. It's a significant difference. That's, what, 25 degrees of a difference here, right? Between 269 of duration for the exhaust valve to 246. That's a significant exhaust valve difference of duration, of how long that exhaust valve is hanging open. So really, what this engine was doing to bring it all back, to bring it into really easily understandable terms, the exhaust valve was actually opening too early during our power stroke, and it was basically allowing our cylinder to exhaust itself out before it was ready to be exhausted. It's supposed to wait just a little bit longer, and that little bit of time, that little bit longer of waiting changes the way the power feels on this engine and could create misfires. So, exhaust valve adjustment confirmed, fixed. We showed the difference here. We changed something. We proved it. I think that's it, guys. I think that's the end of this series. I don't think there's any more that we really have to talk about with this. Now, we will in future classes get into other in-cylinder pressure transducer issues. I think this is an interesting tool. It's a phenomenal tool to see what's happening inside the cylinder. And every vehicle is going to be different. I can't stress this enough, guys. When you're working with any sort of testing like this, where you're really nitpicking, you're really looking for these tiny little differences, try to find a known good to compare against. Because there are some engines out there, there's some VVT engines out there that will run the exhaust timing advanced or retarded at idle, depending on the vehicle, for differing exhaust scavenging, differing just the way the engines are designed. Some of them will run advanced or retarded exhaust timing. So you need to know what you're looking at before you get in it, right? It doesn't make sense to do any testing unless you know what you're testing and what it should look like. We were able to find a known good on this one to compare against, and we were able to prove this one out and make sense of why it was doing what it was doing. So I think that's going to be about it. We got a happy customer, 210,000 mile Honda running like almost brand new. Everybody's happy. We proved it out beforehand before we even sold the job to the customer. So everything's good to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. If you do, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, leave comments below if you like these types of series where they come day after day like this. We'll do more, you know, if this is something that you guys like. So please give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys think. As always, make sure to check us out on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. We're out there on all of those. And I think that's it, guys. So until next time, we'll see you then. Happy wrenching, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.